Right, I am with Darren. Not much positive that we can say about today, really, is there? You come
It's
to Marlow.
finished.
Yeah, 4-1 defeat away at Marlow. What can you take out of the game, if anything?
I think you hit the nail on the head, mate. Very, very disappointing day in the office. I thought defensively, I thought we were all over the shop, and I thought, as probably it's fair to say that Marlow dominated spells of the game, but we had chances, which we were not ruthless enough in front of goal. So yeah, very difficult to take much positive out today, mate. Really, apart from the fact that it's chalked off and we have to move on.
Okay, you made 3 changes to your starting lineup today. You brought in Jermaine, obviously back again after missing Wednesday through work. You brought in Ezekiel.
Yeah.
And you brought in Jay Dunstan.
Yeah.
Any thinking behind that, or was it just purely fit bodies and availability?
Yeah, a little bit of both. I mean, you hope that there's players that have been chomping at the bit to get game time, so you hope that they're going to step up and embrace the opportunity. I don't want to sit here and harp on about injuries because I'm sure everyone's in the same boat. We've known for a few weeks that we had the chance. The deadline was the deadline, and you got to play the hand you're dealt. The boys have come in and they've deservedly so. They've earned the right and the chance to be around the squad today. Have they done enough? Well, I think the result and the performance, in combination with others, I'm certainly not isolating, those changes as being the fact that the result's gone the way it's gone today, but overall, it's simply not good enough. It's not the level of care that we expect.
Okay. We've gone from being a side in March that didn't look like they were going to get beaten to a side now that doesn't look like we can buy a win. Have you and Lee got any ideas what's going on there?
Do you know what? It's hard to say. I feel like the group was sort of fairly new in March, and we were still shaping things up, and I think people kind of come in and bought in, and they were playing for the team and for each other. And certainly the last couple of games, it feels like there's players that are playing their own agendas that are not on the same page, that probably are not looking to do the same or looking for the same outcomes that we're looking for. Lee and I are looking for. So I think that's the hardest thing, because there's nowhere to go with it now, is there? You can't we can't go out and bring new personnel in. We are where we are, and you're hoping somewhere on the line that a bit of consistency and a bit of a conscience will prick these players into realising that actually an awful lot goes on to put this football on. And there are lots of people behind the scenes in the club that actually do care. So they need to show some of that care, which at the moment is not apparent across the board.
I mean, that's what I was going to say. Do any of the players actually care that much about it?
Gal, you've been doing this a long time with me. As I've always maintained, there's a small handful of people in every club that are the lifeblood of the club, that have, that care about everything that goes on. We support all facets of the club. It's not just about the first team, although that's the level that we're always going to be based and judged on. But no, there aren't. There's not. You can only talk about what you see, and there's a lack of apparent of care. People afterwards, in the bar. I'm not saying I want people going in there morbid and blah blah blah, but you want them to seem like they care. You want them to be a bit more respectful. At least until they get in a car and drive home, then they can do what the hell they like. But at the time, seem bothered about it.
Yeah, you want it to hurt, really, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You do, and it's got a prick.
Okay. There were a couple of positives. Let's not be too unjust. Young Nathan came on, looked very bright, very sharp.
Yeah.
Looks about 5 stone wet through, but he looks a tremendous prospect.
Ring him wet, I'd say he'd be 5 stone. But you know what, the kid's a lovely kid. Attitude is perfect. He's patient. He's young, he's a young, enthusiastic lad, and he's like a sponge. Like when you see players that are listening, they're attentive. They're taking the information on. They're looking at what's happening during the game, and you can see that there's there's a, you know, yes, there's an agenda for him personally, you know, in terms of his footballing aspirations, but here he's coming to do a job. And, you know, the 2 cameos off the bench, I think he's done superbly well. You know, would he be far away from probably getting a start in a game on the basis of that and what we're seeing from other players? No, you know, he would feel fairly justified that at some point soon he must get an opportunity.
Okay. Again, I'm going to go on about your 2 other youngsters in there as well, Perry and Toby. I mean, they're what, 18, 19?
Yeah.
They look to show what some of the more senior players don't show at the minute.
Yeah. Do you know what? Again, Perry's been with us a while, hasn't he? He's a good lad. He's, you know, he's embraced the opportunity to get men's football, and you know, he's carrying a bit of an injury, which I think is hampering him a little bit. His hip flexors, you know, playing him up, and you know, I definitely think that's having a bit of an impact on him. But he's trying to play for it, you know, and he's trying to do what he needs to do. Toby's only been in a couple of games. I mean, Toby's a great, you know, he's a great prospect. I mean, that's all you can say at the moment. He hasn't kind of proven anything yet or done anything yet, but he's got a lot of heart, and you know, and he seems to care, and you know, he's having a little bit of grit, and he's putting a few F's and Jeffs into a few senior players. So, you know, for me, that's always going to be a positive, you know, because it looks like he's got that mentality to care.
Okay, we're going to touch on one other thing, and that will be the relegation situation.
Yeah.
I don't like mentioning the R word, but we've got to go through it.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what's going on?
It's, yeah, you know, at the risk of being controversial and, you know, really unpopular amongst the Alliance Leagues and the FA, it's a shambles. It's an absolute shambles. How can, you know, us and Tooting and Westfield and the other teams that are involved not know whether we're, you know, in a playoff position, or whether we've already, you know, survived and retained our status for another year? But also, you know, what an absolutely diabolical situation for Chalfont. That I think in the, you know, worst case scenario that they're in a playoff, but could you know, could be relegated. It's an utter shambles, Gal. And you know what? I think the whole thing's setting itself up for a massive problem, because if Whiteleaf Staines are not automatically relegated and Chalfont take the playoff game, if it's anything else, I just foresee the FA, the Alliance Committee, that all those groups are going to have such a minefield of appeals and problems that are going to land, that it's going to make a mockery of any timescales for the playoff games, which is supposed to be like 7 days later. You know, I don't know. There is a lack of duty of care at the moment. Like I said, I won't be popular for saying it, but I'm not the only person thinking it. And it's wholly unethical the way that this is being handled. Something needs to be resolved. We're 2 weeks from the end of the season.
And I mean, I think the biggest issue is the fact that Whiteleaf were in the AGM and were in the Constitution.
Well, do you know what? I mean, that's the top and bottom line of it. Is if they weren't, then this is conversation null and void.
Yeah.
You know, there was a 20-team Constitution, of which Whiteleaf were in that Constitution. You know, as I said before, they started. That was the whole premise of all of the comments that have gone before, was that was what this is based on. If they weren't, then it's a different conversation. Then you say it's a 19-team division, and you apportion the places accordingly. But they were. So once the AGM has happened and the Constitution's been set, you can't change that. So therefore, you have to factor Whiteleaf as Team 20. But common sense, unfortunately, as we all know, is not common. So it's you know, it's a problem, because if it was as simple as common sense, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Right, well, thank you very much, mate. And I'm going to say happy birthday, but we'll leave it at that.
Cheers, Gal.